It seems funny, but they need to have access to a place to meet. I mean, if you're in an organization where every square foot is accounted for, that's not easy to do. Okay? They need to figure out where they're going to meet, what time. It'd be great if they were in the same location. It would be nice if there was some sort of rewards and recognition for the teams, and they knew that in advance. Okay, let's say that the team's set up and going. Maybe it's going to be a project team. These are some of my suggestions to you. If you're setting up a team for a project, not a standing team like safety or quality, but something that's going to be a project. If you can pick a process or a project that the outside customers are going to notice, then great, because it's high profile. We're working on something significant. We're working on something important. Agreed? Wouldn't that be great? Doesn't have to impact the outside customer, but it would be nice if it could. If it cycles reasonably often, that's going to help you. If it only happens once a month, it's tough because you only got 12 occurrences a year of this process happening. And if you miss it or some hiccup happens, then it's not going to be so great. I would pick something at the beginning that's got a reasonable chance of success. I would not try to solve the problem that has been unsolvable for the past 10 years. Don't pick that one. Okay? If it's a constraint, that would be wonderful, meaning that it limits, whatever this process is, it limits other things. So these are just some suggestions for you. Some errors that you can avoid. Pick a process that no one cares about. Pick a solution instead of a process. And what does that mean? What I'm saying is you've already picked out what you're going to do. I've got a senior project team right now. It's not mine, but it's one of the senior project teams active this semester. But all they're really doing is justifying a capital expenditure, meaning they're going to justify some money to be spent. Pretty much management knows that this is going to go in place, but they need some numbers to support their case. Well, it's great for the students because they're getting some real-world experience, but at the end of the day, if you know you're going to spend the money, then spend it. Let's spend our time doing something else, in my opinion. Okay? If you pick a process that's constantly being changed, then that's not going to help you. Change the process and be done with it. This is not a long-term team deal. The thing is, I've worked with teams that are trying to study a process, and every week it's different. Then how can they make any improvements? This is never the same. Okay. Some things and this would apply to not only, team meetings, but maybe professional meetings you have later on that you're involved with. You're the manager, you're the supervisor, leader, what have you. You need to let them know in advance what they're going to meet about. It's hard to get ready for a meeting if you've never seen the agenda till you got there. All right? And many times you can Google, meeting agendas on the internet and see various examples. It doesn't have to be fancy, but just let people know in advance what they're supposed to be talking about. Do they need to have something ready? Are they going to report something at the meeting? I've got a meeting scheduled this Friday, and the top members of this organization are supposed to come to the meeting with a set of values that are defined for the organization. So they've got homework, essentially, from last week. Right. Well, that's on the agenda, and we kind of set that agenda at the last meeting. This is what we're going to do next week, and everybody knows what the agenda is. But, however, that agenda is going to show up in the Dropbox for the team, and we'll be able to look at it and so on. Okay. Facilitators, I don't know they're absolutely necessary. Depends on your group. If you have a group that likes to get off on tangent conversations, it's somewhat useful to have somebody to keep you on track. I've performed that role many times. But if you have a group that really wants to be there and can focus, then you don't need them. Someone's got to take minutes. And the minutes mean some notes of what happened in the meeting. What was discussed, what was decided. In many cases, you're not going to want to get every comment that's said. Because some people are going to say things that are not, want written down anywhere necessarily. So this takes some experience, of how these notes of the meeting are going to be done. Okay. I generally try to capture lots of ideas that have been said, but I try to filter it, let people look at it before we publish it, basically. Okay. I've been in university meetings where they don't want anything that was discussed written down. All they want written down is what was decided. Okay, well, if that, there's reasons for that. When I'm putting down take minutes on slide 22, my mode is to capture, the essence of the discussion and not exact words of what people are saying, because you can't type as fast as they talk. Right? You're just trying to capture the basic ideas that were discussed. Yes, Teresa?
I was just going to say, drives me batty when someone takes minutes and they don't capture action items.
Yes, true.
They don't capture what was assigned, what someone agreed to do, or what was assigned to someone and who it was assigned to and the day they agreed to have it done by.
Yes.
When I see meeting minutes that's the most critical thing that comes out of meetings sometimes, and I think that when that's not captured, it almost makes those meeting minutes useless.
Yeah, the meeting minutes are often, your only record of what was discussed and decided. And here, when I say make assignments, what Teresa's getting at as well is just there's things that you have homework to do, essentially. If you want to think about it in school terms. Sometimes they call them action items, sometimes they call it homework, some whatever. But this task has been assigned to somebody, and when are they going to have the results, basically? In many cases, it's not that big a deal. It doesn't take a lot of time, so having it done by next week's meeting is fully within expectations. So if they show up to the meeting and they don't have it done, this will be a question of why not. Right? Everybody, you had the minutes. Everybody had the assignments. Well, why are you coming to the meeting without your stuff done? Because sometimes you're waiting on that information to make a decision. And if they don't have it, then we're wasting our time. I've been in many meetings like that. You come there and someone didn't bring their stuff. We should have sent out an email the night before that you didn't have your stuff ready, and we wouldn't have met today. My time is pretty valuable. So sometimes I think early on in a team's existence, evaluating how the meetings are going is very important. Is this the format we want to stick with? Do we need to change anything on how we run our meetings? Very important, because kind of once you establish something that works for everybody, maybe for example, is meeting for 2 hours is that too long of a meeting, or we need to get it down to 90 minutes? Do we need to meet twice a month instead of once a month? Do we want to meet on Fridays? Those sorts of things. How is this meeting going? Is everyone communicating in the meeting? What if you have people that don't say anything? Well, that's not very functional. Okay. So, 100-mile rule, don't interrupt somebody unless you're willing to drive 100 miles to tell them that. Meaning, let's not have a bunch of interruptions in our meeting. It better be very important to interrupt the meeting. So someone to knock on the door, interrupt what's going on, pull somebody out. When you think about a meeting, most of the homework is going to happen outside the meeting. The meeting is just to discuss things, make decisions. The meeting is not to research something. The meeting is there to make decisions. and we're going to discuss data and see what's the best thing to do. Okay, some of this we've talked about, but on your role, you want to show that you're committed to the team effort, that you want to see progress, but you're not making it unrealistic. And if they've asked you to review some work, do it, because we're wanting to maybe get some feedback from you. There's nothing worse than submitting something to management and it never comes back, or it takes forever to come back. And the team's all excited because we've sent something to management. We want to know about this, and it takes forever. The safety team I'm working on, there's time after time that things have been submitted, and the corporate review process takes too long, and people are wondering why it's been months and months and months since this has been submitted, and we're ever going to hear anything back on that. It's kind of deflating. Either yes or no. If you're going to say yes, let's get on with it. If it's no, well, great, we'll do something else. Okay. This I'm not going to spend an entire amount of time on, but I think from an academic standpoint, it's good to be exposed to it. Okay? So if you've been, I would hate for you to go through a Teams presentation and not be a little bit exposed to this, evolution process. Essentially saying to you that the teams are going to take time to develop. There was some research done many, many years ago that talked about stages of development. I don't necessarily think that this is the only research that's out there. There's probably other ways of looking at this. Okay? That being said, you might have some test questions related to these stages. The primary purpose is to get across the idea that teams take time. They're going to evolve. If you've ever been on a sports team, you understand what I'm getting at. If you enjoy sports, you'll know what I'm getting at. Teams that start off not doing well, and then after a while start performing. Okay. I'm not going to cover every slide that's in here about these stages. But the forming stage is when the team starts off, and they're talking about, a lot of times when a team gets started, the people are excited about it. I mean, hopefully you've asked for volunteers and no one's been forced to be there. Sometimes people are forced to be there and they don't want to be there, so they don't have the enthusiasm and optimism. They're just angry about having to be there. If there's volunteers or they've been encouraged in a positive way to join, then a lot of times people are ready for teams to get started. They've been wanting to do this. But there's several questions they might have. What are we going to do? How much influence do we have? How much am I going to contribute? What's our purpose? What's our scope? These are just common questions you'd have at the beginning. Sometimes, and I'm going to say you want to know what the storm stage is. Sometimes teams, when they finally open up and tell you what's really going on, you're going to get a little bit of conflict. But that's okay usually. And I don't know that every team I've been on has conflict per se. But that's what they're saying this stage is about. So that maybe the team has experienced they're in a lull, the things are not going real well. So this might be recognized as a team that's in a storming stage. If they can get past some conflict, maybe they'll start being productive, and that's what they're talking about in this norm phase. People feel like they belong to that team. There's a sense of accomplishment. Okay. People feel free to say what they want. I've been in teams that have been established a week ago and feel free to say what they want. So I don't know that you necessarily have to wait a year. There's a timeline given on one of these pages. Okay. So I can tell you that my experiences has not always been that this is happening. Okay. and that this performing phase is where people trust one another, and you're making steady accomplishments. Again, I don't know that you have to wait this entire timeline. I think that back on the other page here, they have it taking a year or so. And I don't know that this whole cycle takes that long. It depends on the group you have and the attitude of that company. And I don't know that I've seen like I said, I haven't seen conflict in every team I've worked with. So